They thought she'd scream. The room had gone silent except for the sound of a metallic clatter, the training baton skidding across the floor. One cadet groaned, curled into a knot near the edge of the mat, while another gasped, eyes wide, one hand gripping his dislocated shoulder like it might jump back into place if he just squeezed hard enough. The others weren't much better. One was trying and failing to get back on his feet, his leg refusing to straighten, while the last had gone completely still, blinking up at the high ceiling lights like he wasn't sure what just happened. 12 seconds. That's how long it took. She Cadet 12C47B. Just Delta, to most who bothered learning her call designation, stood completely calm, breathing steady, a half step back from where the final attacker had tried to grab her. She didn't look panicked. She didn't look proud. She just looked annoyed. No one moved, not even the instructor. For a second, it was like everyone forgot they were at a military academy, one of the most advanced in the known systems, built to train the cooperative forces of the intergalactic coalition. Every species under the treaty was represented here, some tall and scaled, others almost aquatic, many more strange and warbling or gliding or hulking or blinking with compound eyes. And then there were the humans. The Deathworlders. The humans hadn't been part of the coalition long. Barely a decade by most counts. Just long enough for everyone to have heard the rumors. Not many had seen one up close before Delta joined the academy. She wasn't large. In fact, among the cadets, she was one of the smallest in frame. But there was a tension in her movements, like every step was measured, every breath ready to shift into action. The others had noticed it early, how she didn't flinch during pressure tests, how her eyes moved constantly, tracking exits, cover, weak points. They'd mistaken quiet for weakness. That was the first mistake. She's just a Deathworlder, one of them had said earlier before all this. Looks like she barely passed the entry levels. Probably got in on some special exception, another had muttered. They want diversity? Soft target. Those were the last words spoken before someone tried to blindside her during the unarmed combat drill. She hadn't been warned. They'd planned it on the spot, a test, or maybe just a stupid joke. 4 cadets, coming at once. Thinking it'd be funny to knock her down in front of the instructor, they didn't expect her to move like that. To hit like that. Most in the coalition had never been to a Deathworld. They'd read the reports, reviewed the planetary index classifications, the harsh atmosphere, gravity variances, hostile megafauna, the constant presence of microbial and viral dangers. But reading about Earth couldn't prepare you for what living on it did to a person. Now, 4 advanced species cadets twice her size, trained, genetically boosted by their planet's evolutionary gifts, were on the mats, broken and groaning. No stun gear. No weapons. Just a 57-kilogram. Terran cadet with her hair tied back and a blank look in her eyes, and then she spoke. "Requesting medical for cadets," she said evenly, turning to the stunned instructor. "And a report to command for unsanctioned assault scenario." The instructor didn't answer. His eyes were still locked on the cadet who tried to teleport behind her and wound up with his shoulder out of place. 1 second he'd been on his feet, the next, face first on the mat. The medics arrived fast. They'd been on standby all cycle. They always were during combat. Weeks, but no one expected to deploy them for an internal incident. Certainly not like this. A few were from physiology divisions unfamiliar with human structure. They glanced at Delta as they passed, trying not to stare. 2 of the injured cadets were lifted onto stretchers. The others insisted on walking out under their own power, but their pride limped worse than their legs. No one laughed. There wasn't any smug satisfaction, no gloating. Just silence. The kind that hummed just under your skin and made your fingers twitch. Delta stood in the center of it. Still calm. Still focused. That wasn't her first fight. Not by a long stretch. Back home, training started early. She wasn't from a city. She didn't grow up in the regulated comfort of orbital stations or domed colonies. Her town didn't even have smart walls. They practiced defense the way some cultures practiced religion, generation to generation, without fail. There hadn't been a day in her life where she hadn't known how to take down someone 3 times her size, but the academy wasn't supposed to be a battleground. It was meant to build peacekeepers, not warriors. Report to Admin Hold, the instructor finally said, voice tight. Cadet 12C47B now. She nodded and left without a word. Everyone watched her go. It spread faster than a systems virus. The footage captured by internal cams, leaked by someone in admin, circulated like wildfire across the orbital network. 4-to-1 engagement. No advance warning. No weapons. 12.4 seconds. 4 incapacitated. And just 1 Terran, speculation ignited. Some demanded she be expelled for excessive force. Others called it justified. One alien bureau suggested she'd been genetically modified. A few whispered she might be some kind of sleeper agent sent by Earth to test defensive weaknesses. Terran officials denied it. She, of course, said nothing. She never liked what attention did to a room. By the 3rd day, they'd moved Delta to a solo quarters pod under observation. Not for her safety, though no one said otherwise, but because, whether they admitted it or not, people were afraid. They didn't understand. When humans say they're from a Deathworld, they don't mean it as a boast. It's not pride. It's just context. The bones she'd broken in the training room? That was restraint. The retaliation had been controlled, surgical. If she hadn't pulled her strikes, if she hadn't held back the way she was taught, well, none of them would have walked out. She'd done worse back home on accident. Now, the Academy administrators had a problem. One the Coalition hadn't prepared for. Because while Deathworlders were rare, they were also volunteers. And if this was just a cadet, what would a fully trained human peacekeeper look like under actual threat? Politics churned behind closed doors. Debates burned through channels. And in the middle of it all, Delta sat alone in her assigned quarters, reading case files, reviewing tactical manuals, staying quiet. She didn't care about the whispering. She didn't join to make friends, but what she'd done in that room hadn't gone unnoticed by everyone. Some had watched the footage over and over, not with shock, but with interest, precision, composure under pressure. Controlled response. No collateral damage, and one of them had just sent a message to Delta's internal inbox. Unmarked sender. Class I clearance override. 6 words. ***, welcome to the real program. Cadet, ***, she stared at the screen for a long minute. Before tapping reply, then the message erased itself. Her wristband buzzed. 2 seconds later, ***, evac shuttle arrives in 6. Pack light, ***, no uniform. No instructions. No explanation. She stood, not hesitating, and looked once around the tiny, bare room she'd been confined to. Whatever this new program was, she had a feeling it wouldn't involve training mats and mock scenarios. This wasn't just another elite task force or some SPC ops pull. This felt deeper, hidden, off-record. And suddenly, the bruises on those cadets back in the gym didn't seem like accidents anymore. They'd wanted to see what a human could do. Someone had been watching, and now they wanted more. By the time Delta stepped into the evac shuttle, the corridor was empty, dim, and humming with low engine power. No escort, no sign of which branch had called her up. Just the ever-present background tone of filtered air, and far-off machinery, something you only noticed when everything else went quiet. The shuttle interior wasn't labeled either. No command insignia, no standard seating layout, and definitely no pilot in plain view. She'd only just closed the hatch behind her when the shuttle lifted off smoothly. Like it had been waiting, she stayed on her feet. The lights inside were dark blue, flickering over the metal floor and casting long shadows. There weren't any instructions, so she didn't ask questions. That was Rule 1. If someone doesn't tell you what to do in the middle of an extraction, it means they're watching to see what you'll do on your own. So she picked a seat that faced the exit, kept her back to a wall panel, and waited with her eyes half-lidded like she was relaxed. But every muscle was awake. Every sound was filed away. She was counting how long they'd been flying. 6 minutes. Maybe 7. Definitely not off-planet, but far from any populated sectors of the Academy base. It was a test. Another one, and she already knew someone had planned the entire classroom attack. It hadn't been random. Not with 4 cadets coordinating like that right in front of an instructor. Not when the footage circulated almost instantly. She'd been set up for a reaction. A field trial, maybe? And she passed it almost too well. Maybe that was the problem. And at 9, a compartment she hadn't noticed before hissed open with a slight click. A single, flat case emerged, no bigger than a tablet. The top flashed with biometric lock graphics, but not the Coalition standard. Earth tech. A private build. Her hand hovered over it. She didn't touch it right away. The device was smooth, matte black, with tiny engraving too fine to read through the blue lighting. It gave off nothing, no hum, no heat. Just sat silently, like a coiled question. She scanned her thumb. The case clicked open, revealing a small chip. Embedded in curved plating. A personal AI core, not like the Academy-issued systems. This one was encrypted. Dark hardware, shielded from most tracking arrays. She recognized it from briefing archives. Not everyone had clearance to access. Only one Terran agency used that kind of tech. Black Signal. Most cadets didn't know the name. It didn't come up in public training modules. It wasn't connected to fleet operations or peacekeeping divisions or even diplomatic wings. It barely existed officially. But if you'd grown up in certain areas like she did, you heard whispers. A Deathworld-born, survival-qualified human knew what it meant. Covert strategy. Extreme environments. Non-standard ops. They didn't call it Spec Ops because Spec Ops didn't cover what these agents did, especially the humans. Black Signal wasn't just off-book. It was off-everything, so why her? She stared at the chip for a few seconds longer before snapping the case shut. No instructions yet. The message was clear enough. Someone had taken an interest, and not the kind that involved medals or speeches. This was where things stopped being seen, where decisions didn't leave paper trails. If they were contacting her directly, it meant she was now part of something most cadets weren't even allowed to imagine, strangely. It didn't feel like a promotion. Eventually, the shuttle slowed and descended. No visible landing pad outside the viewport, just dense fog hanging over a rocky slope. No city lights below, either. She guessed they were far outside the protected zones, maybe even past the old mineral trenches, whatever this place was. It had been abandoned by civilians long ago, when the hatch opened. A cold wind slapped her harder than expected. Sharp, dry, definitely Earthwild. The environment didn't feel controlled. And that's what confirmed it. She wasn't on a base anymore, a dark figure weighted by a low outpost entrance. No visible rank, not even a standard-issue uniform. Just a worn coat, dusty boots, and a face that looked like it had seen too many things to ever fully relax again. "You're late," the figure said, voice flat. Delta didn't bother responding. They hadn't told her she was supposed to be on time. The figure smirked faintly, like they expected the silence. "We'll skip names," they said. "You're here because you were never supposed to be seen." Now she frowned. "Then why throw 4 cadets at me during training?" "Had to see what you do," the figure said. "Not raw strength. Not fighting. We needed to see how you controlled it. Who you protected. Who you didn't. Where you draw the edge. And if I didn't hold back, then this conversation wouldn't be happening." The outpost door unlocked with a thumbprint and biometrics Delta wasn't cleared for. Inside, the lighting was dim and amber-colored, casting everything in hard shadow. Old tech manual latches on access panels, optical displays instead of any holoUAs. Most of this place wasn't connected to any coalition signal grid. Delta followed the figure through the halls in silence. The deeper they went, the more it felt like the walls were listening. They passed containment silos. Sealed doorways etched in warning, glyphs she barely recognized. And a sealed hatch that made the hair on her arm stand on end. Something old was behind it. Something strong. Finally, the corridor ended at a small ready room. Inside, the lights burned slightly brighter. A table stood at the center, surrounded by 3 chairs, only one of them occupied. The figure gave a sharp nod toward Delta, then stepped back and disappeared into the hall without another word. The person at the table stood up slowly. Another human, older, compact but steady. The way their eyes scanned Delta reminded her of the wildlife back home. Not aggressive, but deeply aware. "Sit," they said. She did, across the table. The older human took something from a shoulder pouch and slid it across toward her. A patch coal black with a single silver streak slashing through the center. No words, no planet symbols. Just that slash mark. I know you're wondering why we picked you. Delta didn't answer. Not yet. We don't recruit based on scores or grades, the voice continued. We don't care about cadet standings or political favors. What we watch for are restraint and instinct. The power to end the fight and the choice not to. Delta tilted her head slightly. You were watching before the attack? We were watching before you boarded the transport to the academy, came the answer. We've got bioscience scans on every human applicant. Cross-referenced with independent survival record and environmental resilience metrics. Yours were off the charts. We just needed proof the numbers weren't an accident. So I passed. You demonstrated you have more to offer than brute force. And now we'll see if that includes execution under more delicate conditions. Delta waited a beat. If I say no? The older figure just smiled faintly. Then you'll be on a flight back to a standard unit, assigned to patrol or logistics support, with your record quietly adjusted to reflect disciplinary review after an unsanctioned training incident. Nothing serious, but you'll never be cleared for deep operations again. No command. No field post with teeth. You'll disappear into the filing cabinet, and if I say yes? Another pause. This time heavier, then you'll never be listed on a squad roster again. Your deployments will be front-loaded with false backgrounds, scrub it after each mission. You'll answer to no flag. You'll go places where our own diplomats aren't allowed to orbit. And when things go wrong, there won't be backup. Just you. And your decision. Delta stared at the strip of silver on the patch. It was plain, anonymous, like it didn't want to be remembered. Why humans? She asked finally. Why not your best from the core worlds? The enhanced species? You've seen why, the voice said. They come from strong environments. Structured evolution. High-grav training, sure. Thought mapping, controlled aggression. A short pause. Then a slow exhale, but asterisk you. You were born in chaos. Your planet wanted you dead every week of your childhood. And you still climbed out? That's not something we can make in a lab. It's something only a Deathworld gives birth to. Delta looked down at the patch again. It felt heavier now outside, the wind howled louder, and in the darkness underground. Something shifted behind the sealed hatches, something that wasn't supposed to wake. Up not yet. The older human stood and slid another case toward her. First op starts tomorrow. You'll be briefed en route. Mission-sensitive zone with multiple species contacts. Coalition hasn't cleared it, too unstable. Something old stirred and something dangerous answered. I'll need gear, she said, the faintest smirk. You'll need more than that. But we'll begin simple. The hatch opened behind her. Bathing the room in soft amber light again, Delta stood, holding the black patch in her palm, and for the first time since the training room, she felt it. That quiet hum in her bones, something bigger was moving, and she had just been brought into its shadow. The shuttle lifted into the night with a low, bone-deep hum, and something in Delta's chest settled into place. Not calm, not comfort. Just readiness. That old feeling she used to get back home before a storm rolled in. You didn't stop the storm. You didn't run from it. You studied the sky, packed what you could carry, and moved first, quietly. Before the lightning found you, she sat strapped into a seat along the side wall. Opposite two figures too quiet to be regulars, both human by the look of them. Though not from her part of Earth, the one nearest the bay doors had a long scar running down his jaw, half hidden under collar fabric. The other read a coil-bound briefing book, actual paper page by page, no glances up. Neither had spoken since boarding. Delta didn't try to break the silence. If they weren't talking, it meant they weren't cleared to share. The shuttle dipped low through the upper edges of a gravity pocket. Her stomach rolled once. Nothing showed on her face. The older human's voice played sharp in her memory. Asterisk. Something old stirred. And something dangerous answered. Asterisk. Coalition files were spotty on the outer sectors, especially the gray zones. where no species claimed full responsibility. Those systems were barely mapped, and what came back from lost probes or black box recordings was usually stamped with cautionary warnings. Still, rumors always leaked. One system drew attention lately: Walrus Verge. Word was something appeared out there, something that didn't match any known species architecture. Tech signature or energy pattern? Not organic. Not fully machine. Older than any of the big three civilizations? Admitted existed. Delta was betting that's where they were headed. The onboard AI chimed softly. Arrival ETA, 6.3 hours. Observing silent flight protocol. Briefing packet unlocked for Cadet Delta. She tapped the embedded wristband and watched as the holomap flickered in front of her. Red sector. Planetary codes scrambled in places. Satellite data corrupted. But one name stood out: Relay Point Theta 9, an outpost designed to forward communications through deep space corridors. Nearly autonomous. Low crew count. According to the logs, Theta 9 went dark 2 weeks ago. No burst, no distress. Like someone had snapped the wire in their minds. Mid-sentence and left. Nothing behind. Coalition response teams never reached it. One had tried. Their last ping was clipped. Static. Then a single phrase: "It's not alone." No visual feed. No remaining bot is found. Now Black Signal had called her up. She looked across at the scarred man. He was watching her. "You ever fly blind into a fail zone?" He finally asked, voice gravel thin. She considered. "Once. Ship hit a magnetic flare zone off Europa Trail. Lost both nav beacons. 2 survivors." He nodded slightly. "Then you know what it feels like when systems go." "What happened at the relay?" "No one's sure," he said. "That's why we're not sending in fleets. We go quiet, check the scene, and get out before we attract attention." "What kind of attention?" He didn't answer. The paper reader spoke instead, still looking at his pages. "Whatever messed with Theta 9 isn't just tech. We've seen sectors vanish from sensor grids before, but not like this. Power signatures blink out like candles, 1, then 5, then everything surrounding. No residual heat. No orbital debris. Just empty air." "No, there's no pulse. Nothing spreads outward. It just stops." The reader slid 1 page away, eyes still down. And something else caught our eye. Right before the relay vanished, their onboard database logged an intruder alert. Local sensor picked up a shape on the surface. Delta leaned forward. "Shape? No classification." But according to the AI logs. He hesitated, flipping the page. The silence stretched too long. "It walked. No anti-grav. No natural signature. Just feet. In atmosphere-rated armor. Straight through gale winds that should have shredded alloy." The scarred man rested an elbow against the shuttle wall. "And here's the kicker. There haven't been boots on Theta 9 for months. It's robotic maintenance only." Delta didn't move, but the pit in her stomach turned over again. "What you're saying is something boarded a coalition relay, walked through hurricane force wind, breached a sealed outpost and left no trace?" They didn't answer. Sometimes silence said more than words. Later, when the others dozed lightly, eye patches on, posture relaxed like people too used to jumping into the unknown, Delta brought up the remaining briefing data. A separate report flagged in red, * unauthorized transmission intercepted by Deathworlder encryption key. Verified origin, Earth sector. Not coalition approved. * Her gaze narrowed. Someone outside command had sent data into a restricted zone. And Black Signal had pulled her because they knew she might recognize what most wouldn't. She tapped through the logs. A single audio clip remained, low static. Then a whisper of translated Earth English, almost inaudible beneath the distortion. "She's returned." The voice was unlike any she knew. Male, old, strained through something that made it echo oddly, but the tone was unmistakably human. Her gut twisted again. This wasn't just about a lost relay. They weren't being sent in to recover something. They were being sent to confirm something had come back. By the time they broke into orbit over the Theta system, External sensors had already picked up disruptions. Nothing massive, just slight flux shifts in the planet's magnetic field, like something large had moved across the surface recently. No confirmed hostile presence yet. But even through layers of atmosphere, the transmission arrays on the shuttle buzzed once just a crackle, almost like static developing thoughts. The pilot's console pinged. Landing auto-sequence adjusting. No coalition beacon detected. That meant the base wasn't just quiet. It was dead. They landed a few kilometers north of the main array dome, further than planned. Something interfered with the approach vector. The shuttle AI recalibrated twice during descent. Both times, internal systems lagged for just a second longer than safe. Long enough to feel deliberate, they packed gear in full silence. No sleep left in any of their faces now. The scarred man handed Delta a sidearm. Just in case. It won't work if there's no heat signature, she said. Then pray whatever we find does have a heartbeat. Otherwise, we're stabbing shadows. The air on Theta tasted like metal even through filtered masks. Ash in the sky. Wind slapping whipped dust across faded paneling. The remains of a perimeter fence lay half buried in soil, the fence itself unrusted but bent inward. Not torn, not melted. Folded, they reached the outpost an hour later, what was left of it. The outer walls looked untouched. No breaches. Doors locked. Windows clouded but intact. It looked like any other automated station. But the power indicator blinked yellow manual override. Someone had done that recently. Or something had inside. It was darker than it should have been. Flashlights cut through hanging dust and long corridors. The hallway had that strange stillness, like time got caught halfway through a motion and never finished. Then the scent hit. Not blood. Not rot, something older. Cold metal, disturbed ozone, and a faint chemical bite she couldn't identify but made the skin on her arms crawl. This section should be sealed, said the paper reader softly. The log said environmental controls were auto-sustained. No door should be unlocked. They weren't. Each door opened as if expecting them. Their steps echoed wrong. Delta moved deeper into the main memory. Access chamber. At the center. The core was powered down entirely. That shouldn't have been possible without a hard shutdown. External reports never showed one. She opened the panel. Something had pressed against the memory pushbank. Not sliced, pressed into it like a hand. 5 long indentations, melted just slightly but without splatter. No residue. No fingerprints, but something reached for the memory. Deliberately. She stared at it too long. The echo tugged behind her eyes, not from fear. Recognition. Something in her bones said, "You've seen this before," except she hadn't, not in memory. Not in experience, but it felt like home before she could speak. The wall to her left clicked. A screen turned. On black. Then white text. 1 sentence. She knows you. No one typed. It. The screen powered off instantly. Delta looked back at the others, but they were already drawing. Weapons. Something moved behind the far wall. Slow, steady. Walking, just like they said. Heavy steps 2 at a time, coming closer. No signature. No sound but the steps, just darkness. Then there were no alarms. No shutters locking in place. No defensive protocols kicking on. Just those footsteps, slow, impossibly heavy as they drew closer from the far corridor. Step, pause, another step. Still deeper inside the relay outpost behind some reinforced wall they couldn't see through but could feel pressing in around them. Delta raised her sidearm as the lights flickered again. The others mirrored her, the tension in the room thick and electric. Even the scarred man, who hadn't shown the slightest twitch of nerves until now, had gone rigid beside her. No one said a word. The power core was still dead. Systems down. No M activity, no reactor surge, nothing that could explain how a screen had powered on only seconds ago. And now? Now the walls felt like they were breathing. Her ears adjusted to the silence, but it wasn't silence anymore. There was a vibration, low and faint, so deep it didn't register as sound, but more like something resonating through her bones, wrong, like standing too close to one of Earth's Old seismic zones right before the plates shifted back. Corridors sealed, the paper reader whispered, eyes flicking to his pad. No inputs. No movement registered on thermal, pressure, or M-bands. He looked up, pale. But it's still coming. Delta moved first. Secondary path now, she ordered, voice tight but level. East platform exit. They moved in practiced formation Delta in front, the scarred man watching rear, the third guarding their sides. The low, pulsing vibration never stopped. Even the ground began to feel uncertain beneath their boots. Not shaky, just off, like. The walls didn't quite believe they were solid anymore, as they rounded the corner toward the rear hatch. A noise cracked through the hallway behind them. Not a shout. Not metal, it sounded like something bending reality, a sharp, warping groan. As if the outpost itself didn't want to remember what was on the other side of that wall. Something's wrong with the exit, Delta warned. Eyes flashing over the panel, that was putting it mildly. The hatch was gone, no breach, no broken panel, just gone. The walls bent slightly outward where it had been, like they were stretched at the edges. It didn't look like damage from explosives or weapons. It looked unwritten. What the hell is this? The scarred man snapped, approaching slowly, weapon drawn. Delta reached out, slowly running her fingers near the warp in the structure. Space didn't feel right here. The closer you got, the louder that background hum became. Not from the relays. Not from any recognizable system. It was like the building was humming back at whatever had entered it. Do you feel that? She asked. The paper reader nodded slowly. Yeah, what is it? He didn't answer. She turned to see his hand held inches away from the warped wall. It was shaking not from fear, but from the pressure of being near something that didn't follow normal rules anymore. Delta pulled him away, just as a shape passed across the far corridor behind them. Not close enough to see details, just enough to register that something with mass had moved. Quiet as a breeze. Heavy as a star. Its footsteps never sped up, still calm, casual, like it knew it had all the time in the world. Delta turned quickly, scanning the interior structure for anything she could use. Unguarded utility shafts, emergency service hatches, an access ladder, even a weak wall panel, something, anything, but every exit had been sealed or erased, not shut, not blocked. It was like the building had forgotten how to open. This isn't tech I've seen before, said the paper reader. Could be pre-coalition era, but he swallowed hard. It's using the station against us. Delta frowned. No access? Not unless you want to try punching through evolutionary architecture. The scarred man stepped forward. There's a vertical chute in the server room. Old shaft for drone units. Might be narrow, but he suddenly froze in place. Wait, what? What? Delta asked quickly. His face had gone pale. Did you bring that patch system into the main room? Delta shook her head. No, he pointed toward the hallway behind them, a dim, glow green, steady. The black signal patch, the encrypted AI case she'd been given, was now plugged into the wall panel, except none of them had done. And it was open. The AI chip pulsed. Rhythmically, someone or something was using it now. We need to move. Delta said immediately. They sprinted. Breath tight. Boots down. The air pressure increased with every step, like the outpost was descending underwater, except they weren't moving down. The walls pushed against them. Whispers started to deepen around them, building in their ears, not voices. Not words, but a rising flood of suggestions, memories, fears. Delta heard her father's voice, cold, distant, dead. For 10 years, you should have stayed on Earth. The paper reader tripped over a power conduit. Behind them. Another sound occurred. Not a footstep, a breath. They rounded a sharp turn, ducked through the last gate into the emergency gear bay, and slammed the emergency manual lock. Delta held it tight until the seal clicked. Silence. For now, the interior was cramped, lined with faded repair suits and rust-specked harnesses. A chasm broke beneath the floor structure, an old evac port, probably meant for drone retrieval. Jagged, shouldn't be safe. But it was open, They didn't have time to argue. Delta slipped through first, boots finding narrow ledges and shaky mesh. They climbed down 3 levels before finding hard footing. All the while, no noise from above. No chasing. No follow. That was worse. It meant they were being led. 3 turns later, the walls changed. No longer standard alloy. Older, etched with patterns she couldn't recognize. Symbols that pulsed faint gray light, not installed by Coalition engineers. Something had been beneath Phaeton 9 all along. There was a structure here before the station. Delta said out loud, buried underneath, the reader confirmed. They built the outpost right on top of it. Probably didn't even know. Delta's breath caught in her throat. Or maybe someone did? They moved slowly now. The cold deepened. The air took on a scent sweet, decay-like, too clean to be rotting. Too unnatural to be natural. That's when they saw the figure, down the corridor, back turned to them, still, silhouette in armor so dark it absorbed the light. Broad shoulders. No identifying insignia. No helmet details. Just a visor glowing softly. Almost curious. Delta raised her weapon. The figure didn't move. The scarred man muttered, "That's Earth spec." She looked at him. He nodded. "That armor's human, pre-coalition, real old. What unit?" She asked. "No clue. That model was blacklisted before I was born." Her mind raced. What were the chances some ancient Terran ghost was buried out here? How did a human-built unit end up inside a coalition relay no one had visited for weeks? Unless her theory was true, they hadn't discovered something new, they'd woken something up. The figure turned slowly. The movement was subtle, wrong, like it rotated too. Smoothly. No face, just the faintest reflection of Delta's own expression mirrored in the visor, and as the silence deepened, it spoke, not through Vox, not through speakers. Through her, words, wrapped in her own voice. "Do you remember what I was made for?" Delta froze completely. The paper reader swore under his breath. She stared at the figure. "What are you?" she asked out loud. The voice answered as if smiling. "The last protocol of Earth." The earth beneath her crashed through the moment before she could draw again. The floor split open beneath them. The fall dragged her down in complete silence, and above her the visor glowed brighter. Watching? The fall should have broken bones or worse, but Delta hit the ground hard and rolling, instinct overriding shock. Her limbs ached, her ribs were screaming, but nothing snapped. Not yet. The floor below was old alloy, bent like it had shifted under decades of strain. A red emergency light flickered in the corner of whatever this underground chamber had once been. It was wide, round, and steeped in dust that hadn't been stirred in years. Maybe longer. The others dropped behind her seconds later. The paper reader landed awkwardly, scrambling up with a groan. The scarred man hit like he'd done it a dozen times before and was already aiming upward. When he caught his breath, no sign of pursuit yet. No sign of the armored figure either, just quiet, but not peace. They were deeper now. Under the earth. Beneath the station. Beneath whatever this place was before any map had drawn it in Southern Galactic Registry. Delta scanned the perimeter. This room wasn't in the blueprint from the mission brief. It wasn't in any of them. Its walls weren't made from Coalition alloy or any recognizable building material. There were symbols etched along the rim-old Earth script, but twisted, stylized beyond recognition. If she squinted just for a second, she could swear they looked like roots. Not letters. Not language. "Someone built this?" the reader whispered. "From our world?" "No," Delta replied, her voice dry low. "Someone left it behind?" The scarred man stepped to a wall panel partially embedded in the floor. Light pulsed beneath it, dripping slowly upward instead of down, like gravity was confused. Like time had shifted in here. He crouched beside it and ran a low-frequency sweep from the side of his rifle. "Quantum field distortion," he muttered. "Older than the relay. Deeper than planetary crust monitoring records picked up." Delta turned toward the far corner. There was a chair. Or what remained of one. Big, metal, human-shaped, not modern or ergonomic outdated, but massive. like a throne built for someone always ready for battle, and in it, ash. The fragments of what once had been bone and suit wiring. Human. Delta crept closer. Her boots crunched on dried rust. The scarred man joined her, his jaw tightening. This is a death chair, he said quietly. A last stand rig. From before the peace accords. Pre-coalition wars used these on outer ring colonies. Only one soldier. Only one outcome. Deathworlder tech. Meant for final missions. Delta didn't say anything. Her eyes locked on something in the center of the seat. Carved into the armrest. Etched by hand, old and clumsy. She read it out loud. Contain, protect, return. The words weren't a motto, they were an order, and then it hit her, that voice in the dark, calm, in her own tone. The question it asked, asterisk, do you remember what I was made for? Asterisk, this wasn't just a rogue AI or ancient automaton. It was hers, more than that. It had been. Waiting for her. The scarred man looked at her slowly. You think it's signal linked? A biometric code? He paused. You ever served with anyone who... No, she said, cutting him off. But maybe I didn't have to. Maybe I'm just part of the chain. The reader knelt near the base of the chair and opened his scanner. The data pouring in was fragmented but undeniable. This AI wasn't abandoned, he said. It was put to sleep, buried under memory locks tied to a genetic seed trace. His eyes snapped up. Yours, Delta's mind raced. It didn't make sense unless Earth had known one day they'd need it again. A buried directive. A ghost program sealed off at the edge of known space, behind relay fences and coalition bureaucracy. Not forgotten, hidden. But why now? Why wake up? The chamber's walls began to shift, the dust shook. Just barely, and above, they heard the door open. Not with violence. With intent. The armored figure stepped down slowly. Boots precise, movement smooth as silk, like time still hadn't caught up to it. The visor gazed down at them, not threatening, not hostile, just aware. It carried no weapon. It didn't need one. Delta stepped forward, the others flanked her. Slowly, it's linked to your bloodline, the reader said again quietly. Maybe by name. Maybe by imprint. Pre-Iteran codes were wild like that. She exhaled and raised her empty hands. You know me? The machine stopped 2 meters away. This time, the voice didn't echo in her own head. It projected into the chamber. Calm, gentle, deep, familiar. I knew who would come, it said. I waited until she was ready to remember. Delta blinked. What am I supposed to do? It turned its head, then it pointed to the chair, not as an order. As an offering, behind her. The scarred man made a small sound. This is a transfer, he muttered. It was never meant to stay active forever. It was meant to pass on. It's been holding the gate closed. The reader nodded slowly. And now it's too tired, or maybe it knows something worse is coming. The armored figure stepped aside, letting her see the data core embedded. Beneath the seat, something pulsed beneath it. Something pushing. Inward, Delta reached forward. Slowly. The air was hot, vibrating, alive. Her hand touched the core. She felt a rush of memories, not hers. Not the machine's either. A long archive of signals, images, voices. Civilizations lost. Conflicts that never made it to the record books. Early Earth explorers. Martian terraformer rebellions. Silent wars in asteroid tunnels. Everything humanity had buried to survive long enough to join the coalition. This machine had seen all of it, and it had held the gate closed. What's behind the door? She whispered. The voice answered plainly. A weapon. Not forged. Fed. Made to grow with war. You built it accidentally. Then you locked it here, beneath your own stations? Beneath your own pride? Delta's jaw tightened. And now someone found a way to wake it. Not someone, the machine said. Something. She withdrew her hand. The offer was clear now. Step forward and take command, or walk away and let another generation stumble into the same war. The system wouldn't survive a second one. What about the relay? The reader asked. Why attack it? Not attacked, Delta said softly. It was a side effect. The gates breaking down. The signal interfered with everything. That's why they couldn't track it, because there wasn't a target, just echoes. A low rumble echoed from above. Debris fell. It was time. Delta looked once at the figure, then at the chair. Will you go quiet after I do this? She asked. The figure nodded once. This form is borrowed. It ends with you. Delta stepped forward. Sat. The pulse intensified. Sensors went wild. Her body screamed heat, light, cold, memory, like she was being pulled inside. Something alive. And then it all went still. The chamber began to brighten as power rushed through old veins. Entire halls lit back up in bursts of gold and silver light. The outpost shook, but it wasn't falling apart, it was waking up. The terminal ahead of her began translating. Words spilling in basic Terran script. Asterisk, asterisk, command accepted. Asterisk, 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 inheritance verified. The scarred man shielded his eyes. What now? The reader yelled over the rising hum. Delta's eyes locked forward. She saw beyond the chamber now. Beyond Phaeton 9, the whole region spreading out in her mind like a live map. More signals waking. More gates trembling, one of them already broken. We stop what's coming, she said calmly. And if we can't? The reader asked. If we fail? Then we make sure someone else picks up the signal. Outside, the wind howled like earth storms, but inside? Inside, the last gatekeeper had finally passed the torch. And the new one knew exactly what she was made for.